It began as a protest and became a revolution that reshaped the world, an idea whispered in colonial taverns and debated in town squares. That would ignite a conflict against the most powerful empire on earth. This is the story of how a collection of disparate colonies dared to defy a king and, against all odds, forge a new nation founded on the principles of liberty and self-governance. This is the story of the American Revolution. In the mid-18th century, North America was a tapestry of British colonies, each with its own character, yet all under the authority of the Crown. Life was a blend of opportunity and hardship, a frontier spirit tempered by British law and tradition. But the relationship was changing. After the costly 7 Years' War, known in America as the French and Indian War, Britain found itself in staggering debt. To London, it seemed only fair that the colonies, who benefited from the protection of the British military, should help pay for it. A series of taxes followed: the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act. To the colonists, these were not just financial burdens. They were an infringement on a sacred principle: no taxation without representation. Tensions simmered and then boiled over. In 1770, a street brawl in Boston between American colonists and a lone British soldier escalated into the Boston Massacre, leaving 5 civilians dead. The event was immortalized in propaganda, stoking anti-British sentiment. 3 years later, in a daring act of political protest, colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor, the Boston Tea Party. Britain's response was swift and severe. The intolerable acts closed the port of Boston, curtailed local government, and expanded the power of the royal governor. Instead of crushing the rebellion, these punitive measures united the colonies in opposition. The fuse was lit. On the misty morning of April 19, 1775, the first shots were fired. British regulars marched from Boston to Lexington and Concord to seize colonial military supplies and arrest rebel leaders. They were met by local militiamen, farmers, blacksmiths, and merchants. The shot heard round the world at Lexington Green marked the beginning of open warfare. The disciplined redcoats, symbols of imperial might, found themselves harassed and bloodied on their retreat to Boston by a determined, unconventional foe. The war for independence had begun, not with a grand declaration, but with the chaotic courage of ordinary people defending their homes and their rights. As the conflict escalated, the intellectual and political heart of the revolution pulsed in Philadelphia. At the Second Continental Congress, delegates from the 13 colonies debated their next move. It was here that a Virginian lawyer named Thomas Jefferson was tasked with drafting a document that would articulate their cause to the world. The Declaration of Independence was more than a list of grievances against King George III. It was a radical assertion of human rights, that all men are created equal, endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On July 4, 1776, Congress adopted the Declaration. There was no turning back. They were no longer colonies fighting for their rights as Englishmen. They were states fighting for their existence as a new, independent nation. Leading this fledgling nation's army was a man who had become synonymous with the Revolution itself: George Washington. The Continental Army he commanded was a ragtag force, often poorly supplied, underpaid, and battling not only the British, but also hunger, disease, and despair. The brutal winter at Valley Forge in 1777 tested their resolve to its absolute limit. Yet, through sheer force of will, Washington held the army together. He imposed discipline, drilled his troops with the help of foreign officers like Baron von Steuben, and embodied the resilience of the revolutionary cause. His leadership was the glue that prevented the fragile rebellion from shattering. The war was a grueling series of advances and retreats, victories and defeats. A pivotal moment came in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York. In a stunning turn of events, an entire British army under General John Burgoyne was forced to surrender to American forces. This victory was more than a morale boost. It was a diplomatic triumph. It convinced France, Britain's historic rival, that the American cause was viable. The French entered the war on the side of the Americans, providing crucial financial aid, weapons, and most importantly, a powerful navy. The conflict was no longer a colonial uprising. It had become a global war. The American cause found allies beyond France. Spain and the Netherlands also joined the fight against Britain, stretching British military and financial resources thin across the globe. Benjamin Franklin, a master diplomat in Paris, skillfully navigated the complex courts of Europe, securing support and legitimacy for the new United States. The American Revolution became a proxy war and a grand struggle for global power, with European rivalries playing a decisive role in the fate of the North American continent. The final act of the war unfolded in Virginia in the fall of 1781. Lord Cornwallis, the British commander in the South, had positioned his army at the coastal town of Yorktown, expecting to be resupplied by the Royal Navy. But in a brilliant strategic maneuver, Washington's army, coordinating with French ground troops, marched south to trap Cornwallis by land. Simultaneously, the French fleet sailed into the Chesapeake Bay, defeating the British Navy and cutting off any chance of escape or reinforcement. Surrounded and under relentless bombardment, Cornwallis had no choice. On October 19, 1781, the British Army marched out of Yorktown and laid down its arms. The fighting was effectively over. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris was signed, formally recognizing the United States of America as an independent nation. The victory was not just military, it was ideological. The American Revolution sent shockwaves across the world. The idea that a people could overthrow a monarchy and establish a government based on the consent of the governed was a powerful and revolutionary concept. It inspired movements for independence and democracy in France, Latin America, and beyond. The United States, born from protest and forged in war, began its long, complex, and often difficult journey to live up to the profound ideals proclaimed in its founding documents. A new chapter in world history had begun. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to share, like, and subscribe to Digital Time Vault for more history in motion. Thanks for watching.